I am Dr. Mollie Marty, and welcome to Resiliency Matters. Today, we are speaking with Shani Godwin, founding CEO of Communiqué USA, a marketing firm in Atlanta, Georgia. Shani founded this firm on the concept of the currency of joy, and this is a concept that she paid a high cost to learn, and it's paying high dividends. So today, we are going to be talking about adversity, joy, and resilience. Welcome, Shani.
Hi, Mollie. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Oh, have I. I just love talking to you. The first time we met, you actually reached out to me with an invitation on LinkedIn, and I could feel your zest for life, your joy through that invitation. And then I started Googling your work and looking at some of what you do, and I found a really raw, honest conversation about your mental health journey as a young, driven professional. Would you share some of that story with us today?
Absolutely. I've one of the big privileges of my life actually is to share this story, and it's a raw, gritty story, but it's also full of love and light and healing, and that's why this work matters to me so much. I was your consummate, firstborn child, high functioning, high achieving daughter of three. Born in Atlanta, really high achiever, graduated early from college. My superpower, I like to tell people, is writing. And I always wanted to use that gift, and was fortunate enough to be able to go into corporate America at a very young age and work in advertising on both the agency side and the corporate side. And so, like most of us, when you're a young woman or a young person, we have this life plan. And Mollie, I'm sure you had the life plan. We all kind of have this plan of how perfect our life is going to be. And, it wasn't up until, it was really like most of my life up until about the end of the 20s. It was like I had the Midas touch. Whatever I set my mind to, I did it. I checked the boxes. I got married, check, got the job, got the degrees, the MBA. And it wasn't until I started Communiqué, which was around the age of 27, I really started thinking a little bit more deeply about my life. And what I knew was that I loved to write. And so I was married. I was really encouraged heavily by my ex to just really lean into the passion of writing. And I had a lot of reasons why I was scared of the gift, namely that I decided to go to college to write books and was redirected into a corporate, sensible career by one of my parents, and him really encouraging me to just show up in the world the way I was designed was kind of the first step into kind of leaning into the natural God-given gifts I had been given. And it was work that fueled me and made my heart flutter and made me happy. And so I got the opportunity to leave corporate America. I was working in consumer advertising at Bell South, which if anyone of any age with maturity on it knows the Bell companies, but if you're a little younger, this would have been like the predecessor to AT&T, the phone company. I was working in consumer advertising, and the year was 2002. To frame where we were in the country, we had just gone through 9/11 the year before I started the company, and it was an odd time of the country. This was not a season where people were really leaving good, stable corporate jobs to go do independent work. And so I jumped out there and Communiqué without missing a beat, that little Midas touch I had. It was just magical. I would meet someone and we get an account, and probably about 3 years in, right as I was cresting over that 29-year mark into my 30th year, I really started praying deeply and asking God, like, what is this? Like, what is this business? Why is everything so effortlessly? I became curious about what is your purpose for me through this? What is your will? And so I tell people I prayed the prayer that was that prayer, the grand poobah of all prayers that I tell people, if you are any person of faith, be careful what you pray for, because the universe has a funny way of answering. I said, God, whatever it is you want me to do, I will do it. And I meant it, and I had no clue what I was praying. 2 months later, after a lot of soul searching, really digging in deep with that high achiever in me, going way overboard, I actually suffered a mental break. I had a complete mental breakdown. I ended up hospitalized and was given a diagnosis of depression. with psychotic features. And that was confusing. It was hard. It made no sense. I mean, it did not reconcile with who the persona I knew myself to be. I had corporate clients and people who were depending on me. And here you took this high functioning, high achieving woman who had that Midas touch in the life plan, and it just was like blown to smithereens. Specifically because at the time, that was around 2005, we were not having conversations about mental health. We definitely were not having those conversations in the workplace. I didn't know anything about mental health, yet here I was sitting squarely in psychiatrist's office, therapist's office, getting medication, being given a diagnosis, which felt in a lot of ways like a death sentence, because I was also being told to keep it quiet, keep it private, don't share the truth of what was happening. And so I rushed myself back to work and client engagements really quickly in 3 weeks, which in hindsight was really crazy, and suffered the consequences of that for about 8 months, really struggled with some deep, dark depression, really just trying to make sense of what had happened. And I now see and look back and know it was really just kind of a loss of self, a loss of identity. Years later, a couple of years later, my ex-husband would leave my husband at the time chose to leave the marriage without explanation. And so being abandoned 2 years later spun me right back into the narrative. So second identity crisis, me as the wife, big blow up again to the plan. And then 18 months later, woke up to a phone call that my dad had passed away in his sleep. And so those things combined over the course of 3 years really brought me to a place of surrender and acceptance that depression was the diagnosis I had been given, but I chose to not be defined by it. And I said, you know, if this is who I am and this is a part of me, then I want to learn how to live my most authentic self. And I refuse to let society define what that looks like for me. And so that was the start of the real me coming to surface. And here we are about 16 years later. And, you know, I've been blessed to be on this amazing, very charmed life journey that has allowed me a lot of tools like therapy and deep conversations and meditation, and tools that I think have made me a better me. So someone asked me recently if I could give my life a story or title, what would it be? And I said it would be Surviving is the Gift. So that's a little bit about that part of the story. So
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And you use this concept of the currency of joy to guide your marketing company along the way. You've garnered an impressive roster of clients: Chick-fil-A, Safeco Insurance Company, Georgia Power, the Atlanta Food Bank, Worldmaker International.
yes.
How has focusing on joy fueled your work?
Yeah, so it's funny. We were blessed to really kind of hit this pinnacle mark at Communiqué, which is getting over that $1 million mark, right? Like it's something that so many companies are striving for. And I think for me, the business was really a place of refuge. Like when all of the things were falling apart, the place that I felt happy and had joy was if I was writing. Because as I told you, writing was the gift that spurred me into all of this work. And so pouring all of that energy into the business helped it grow and scale over the $1 million mark, which for a lot of business owners is this kind of holy grail, like you've made it if you can get over the 7-figure mark. And I found myself in the middle of another depression spiral because I was growing too quickly. We weren't able to manage the growth well, and it was taking its toll on me as the leader. And yet everyone around me was saying, you should be happy. People were defining and telling me how I should feel about it. You should be happy. This is what you've been working for. And everything in me felt sad, lonely, isolated. Nobody had prepared me for the stress that would come at the top of that climb. The world told me I should be happy because, I mean, it's the American dream, make a lot of money. And I didn't feel that way. And so that sent me into, some more depression, some sleepless nights. And I woke up at 3 a.m. one morning crying. And I just was like, this is not the success the way I want it to look. And what would life look like? And what would my business look like if I redefined success based on the things that made me happy? because I drifted way away from writing. By the time you're running $1 million enterprise, you're doing operations, HR, all these things that aren't germane to who you are. And so with that, I decided that if it did not bring me happiness, then I didn't want to be in that part of the business. And I would find the people to come alongside me and be a part of my team that were happy and fulfilled and got joy from doing the things that I wasn't naturally good at.
And like I said, I have a close-up look at your team, and they are joyful people and a pleasure to work with. This concept of prioritizing joy, I think, sounds soft to many, unattainable to probably more. What would you say to that?
I think I would say that it's perspective. I had someone tell me recently, my therapist actually, like, what you expect to see is what you will see. And so I know for me, to be able to recognize joy, when you can really understand how joy feels in your physical body, it becomes easier to spot. And joy comes to us in so many different ways, but you do have to be able to tune into it and know yourself and be self-aware enough to know how you're driven. And so it requires an inside out view of self versus this outside in.
So before we go to our first break, Shani, how about one practical way for our viewers or listeners to cultivate joy?
Cultivate joy. So one of the things I do, I have this little happy girl inside of my heart. I literally visualize her with wings. And when I am happy, she starts beating those wings and fluttering. And I will tell you, I was in a Whole Foods near my house, which is like a 2-story Whole Foods. And I walked in there and she just started beating those wings. Now, I don't know why, but I knew she was like, this is a place you need to come to more often. And so I don't dismiss, and I pay attention to what joy feels like in my physical body. And I look for the small and the big blessings. And so my advice would be, don't minimize how simple joy can look or feel for you in your life. It doesn't have to be this big elusive thing that you're always chasing. It's right here for the taking for you every day. You just have to be aware of it and ready to seize it.
Excellent. So paying attention and honoring the feeling of the bubbling or the wings. I tend to turn the butter when I'm happy and feeling joyful. India sees that, our producer, at the end of the show. So my little girl might be turning the butter. But right, we know that feeling when we're aware of it. And you're saying that's a really important step next to that celebration, that physical, the physical effects it produces. Excellent. All right, more on cultivating joy and resilience when we come back. Stay tuned.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At Mediacom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared, and you can be certain we'll keep your world connected.
Thank you for virtual family dinners and long-distance birthday wishes. Thank you for sweet streaming melodies and spontaneous dance parties. Thank you for keeping classrooms together and learning alive. Thank you to our incredible network of employees who make all these beautiful connections possible.
Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening, our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and Mediacom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mollie Marty, and welcome back to Resiliency Matters. Today we're talking with Shani Godwin of Communiqué USA. And Shani, you help to weave joy into corporate cultures. Talk a bit about that. How do we create these environments of joy?
Absolutely. We talked before the break about that 3 a.m. epiphany, right, for me. And so when I realized I wanted to redefine the way success looked for me, and not just redefine success, but how I measured success. Like, we live in America, so we typically measure our success by our material gains, how much money we make, what kind of car we drive, those things. And not that those things don't make us happy, but for me, it needed to be a deeper level why. And so I created a platform called Joy Economics. And Joy Economics is all about helping corporate America recognize that the more we invest in each other's health and wellness, particularly on the mental health side, the better off we all will be for producing revenue, income, et cetera, which is the whole reason we're in business for the first place. So I quickly, Mollie, started building a business case for Joy Economics, because to your point earlier, it does sound like just kind of woo-woo feel-good stuff. And the reality is that stress is actually what works against joy. And so when we think about just the world that we're living in, and I do think that it has been exacerbated because of the pandemic, which has in a lot of ways brought us closer and more connected. Well, that level of intense connection also makes it harder to get off of the grid, to get off of the computer, to get off of social media, and to just reconnect with your lives. And so I tell people it's sad that it took a pandemic to socially distance us, when we, before the pandemic, were physically connected and very distant socially because of electronics and overconnectedness. And so when I did the research, I saw that stress was costing US companies $360 billion a year in losses, revenue, hard hit, cash to the bottom line, because people were bringing their stress home and they were not fulfilled at work. And when you're not fulfilled at work, it's going to seep into other areas of your business, creating, marital problems, missing and absentee parents from the household, depression, anxiety, all the things that we know work against us in our wellness. And so for me, I advocate making money, but making money in ways that are human and allow employees and employers to exploit and bring the best of who we are. And that starts with everyone recognizing we're all made differently. And to the extent that I can align people and put them in their joy center in my organization, meaning this is the highest place that you'll function because it creates massive amounts of happiness, because it's just who you were created to be, that person is going to expend a lot less calories doing the job. They're going to do it with higher productivity, greater joy, and then my organization is going to rise off of the currency of joy. And when we do that, there is space for life. And so at the end of the day, we're all working to have a great life, I believe. And life is more than work, in my opinion.
I would second that. You also specialize in helping women. And I'm wondering what special needs and opportunities do you see working with professional women?
Yeah, so I have a heart for women, women's issues. I think it is hard to be a hardcore, hard in the paint career woman and do life and womanhood well. Corporate America is built off of male systems and masculine ways of doing things. And when we look at women and who and how we were created, we have very feminine energy that, if allowed, can really be supportive and is very needed in the business place. But it doesn't mean that we have to show up as men doing the same work in the same ways. And so women, I think, have a lot of guilt complexes. I mean, I see it with myself. I see it with my friends. It's the woman who's feeling bad because she needs to be at the baseball game or at the ballet lesson, but she's, on the clock and missing parts of her life. It's the woman who wants to pick kids up from the bus stop but doesn't want to meet the conference call. It's the person who may not even be in a heterosexual relationship, but has partner or friends who are depending on them. And that constant pull and tug, I think, hits women differently, because we are the nurturers and we are expected to be providers and nurturers. And that tension between the two we carry a lot of guilt about it. And when you look at like the women who make it to certain levels in business, it comes a lot of times at a lot of personal sacrifice and cost. And so we're really excited in our Joy Economics coaching program to teach women how to redesign and define their businesses on their own terms. And that starts really with understanding what their personal why is and what their personal story is.
Excellent. And talking about personal story, that's another piece of work that we've done together on the Worldmaker brand story. Why are our stories so important in connecting with other people and inspiring others?
Yeah, Molly, you hit the nail on the head. Stories connect us, right? Our stories, our narratives, they carry our history, they carry our desires, our hopes, our dreams, and that is where we heart to heart connect and engage with each other. When I think about, my sisters are on this deep ancestry exploration. COVID has brought my whole family to this like search for all the stories in the family. And as I learn and identify stories from the past, it clarifies who I am more, because I see myself reflected in my ancestors and those that came before me. It allows me to stand in my power a lot more without questioning who I am and why I think the way I think and how I got here. And when I'm able to give voice to that for myself and through my brand story or through my personal story, share with someone like a Mollie Martin in just a simple LinkedIn message, that connection happens real time. And I find that story is often the conduit that allows us into the interior of each other's lives and business lives as well.
So you've mentioned a shared story that we're living out together right now with the global pandemic.
Yes.
And I'm seeing in our corporate work a real shift where people, they're hardworking, they're dedicated, they know their why, they know they have gifts to share with the world, and they are very invested in the impact, a positive impact on our world. And I'm really feeling this, and they will no longer do it at such high costs, tracking your story. They're waking up to that commitment to their personal wellness, commitment to their family and personal life, and a real integration. So I imagine if I'm seeing this in my work, you're front and center on that. So what are you seeing? And pull out a bit of goodness that you're seeing that you really think is going to serve us well as we move through and beyond this pandemic.
Yeah, so we're definitely living in this day and age of like, speak your truth. My sister and I have this argument all the time because she's like, oh, I hate that speak your truth movement. And I'm like, but it's so necessary, right? And there's a way to do it in kindness and love. But I think, I've been out here in these entrepreneurial streets now for a couple of decades, and where we were seeing kind of, again, the parent that told me, you got to get a corporate serious career, stay there forever and die. We've shown up and are showing out in different ways today. I think people are becoming into and awakened differently. And I think that's the gift, one of the gifts of the pandemic. It caused us all to sit our butts down and really, really think about what priorities matter, what old priorities needed to die and what new priorities need to become. I mean, I heard so many stories and have heard so many stories about busy, overscheduled parents really reconnecting with their kids for the first time. And when you get a good, 21, 30 days of doing something over and over behind your belt, we've formed new habits because of COVID. And so, the question I think that a lot of people are grappling with is not who was I, and how do I get back to her or him, but who do I want to be? And I think that's the beauty that the pandemic has offered a lot of us. I mean, I'm hearing crazy things. We do a lot of recruiting for marketing positions in our organization, and there are a lot of people who are like, if I can't work from home, I don't want the job. I'm hearing people quitting jobs because they can't work from home. So it's just definitely an awakening happening in the marketplace. And I think corporate is having to and will continue to have to adjust and respond to the needs of talent. And we're seeing that in the marketplace. It's harder to find talent, and talent is showing up in very different ways with very specific requests for them that will balance out the employer-employee relationship so that it's a little bit more fair and equitable.
So what would you say to someone who's listening today and they, are picking up, all right, you ladies are talking about joy, and I'm not experiencing much joy in my life and my work. Where do people start? Can you give us a few ideas?
Yeah. So, it's oddly the gift of depression. Had I not had this story and this topsy-turvy, complete, disruption of my plan happen, I don't know that I would be able to be the chief joy officer. And, the irony of the story is the person who has struggled the most emotionally with sadness becomes, the will for her life is for her to be an ambassador for joy. And so, I advocate definitely for cultivating a relationship with yourself that really allows you to become very self-aware of what your needs are, not apologizing for what those needs are. And more important, the gift that depression has brought me is whenever sadness is there, it's not something for me to hide or run from, but it's something to explore. So it's always now an indicator that something is misaligned in my life. And as soon as I can find what is off center and fix that, then the sadness dissipates. So I've just learned to use unhappiness, discomfort as clues that it's time to shift and it's time to move and grow. And I've learned that through it all, growth is what the beauty of those seasons. You don't grow in like the easy times, you grow in the hard times.
You're singing our song. So really bringing a curiosity to that. You mentioned stress before and stress management. Let's round out our conversation. What is that connection between reducing stress or managing stress and joy? What would you say is that relationship?
I think stress is the opposite of joy. Like stress kills. It kills families, friendships. It kills our bodies physically. And when you are grinding it out all of the time, we are so stressed as a society. We normalize stress, right? You ask a friend, how are you doing? The first thing out of her mouth is, oh my God, I'm so busy. It's like, clap, clap, clap. Yay, you're busy. And I'm like, no, we're not supposed to be this busy. And so I know it's easier for me to find joy when there's a lot less stress in my life. And in order for there to be a lot less stress in my life, I've got to be intentional about taking breaks, creating space and white noise for me to just show up and just be. Even if that means taking time to go sit outside for 30 minutes. Don't talk to anyone, just sit with the sunshine on my face. Just those 30 minutes of vitamin D will fuel me in a way that, will create more space for joy to show up.
And what a great sentence to end on, right? If we create that space, if we tend to the environment, joy is a natural, process of just being present in that moment.
Absolutely.
So thank you for all the different ways you brought us to that point. I really appreciate this conversation, Shani. And thank you, viewers, for joining us on MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.